Not one of our victims had done anything to harm or attack us. Not one was allowed to plead for their lives in court. Not one was shown any mercy before they suffered cruel and painful death. This massacre of men, women and children, as I said, is the worst atrocity in history. Never before have we killed so many people solely because of their nationality. In law, killing people because of their nationality is a crime of genocide. Let me briefly explain the legal definition of genocide. Genocide, and I quote, means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial or religious group, as such, A, killing members of the group, B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. And there are two other criteria that are not relevant in this situation. The legislation then goes on to specify the 4 elements of the crime that must be in place before a court can convict a person for genocide by killing. And they are: 1, the perpetrator killed one or more persons. So it is possible to commit genocide and only kill one person. 2, such person or persons belong to a particular national, ethnic, racial or religious group. 3, the perpetrator intended to destroy, in whole or in part, that national, ethnic, racial or religious group as such. And 4, the conduct took place in the context of a manifest pattern of similar conduct directed against that group, or was conduct that could itself effect such destruction. The principle underlying the criminal law doctrine of joint enterprise is that when a gang or group assaults or murders a victim, even those members who do not physically participate or strike the fatal blow, but simply lend encouragement, assistance, or approval to the crime, are as guilty as the chief perpetrator and will receive similar prison sentences. By taking part in the unlawful armed attacks on Afghanistan and Iraq, Britain's political, civil and military leaders aided and abetted the genocide of the Iraqi and Afghan people, and all of them are criminally liable to be tried, indicted and punished as principal offenders under sections 51 and 52 of the International Criminal Court Act and Article 25 of the Rome Statute. That summarises the issue in a sense. Let's move on to the third point. Who is responsible for the crimes? Who are Britain's main war criminals? The main responsibility for the wars with Iraq and Afghanistan obviously lies with George Bush, Tony Blair, Barack Obama and Gordon Brown. But there are several thousand others in Britain who took a leading part in the planning and conduct of the war and are responsible in law for the consequences. They include the Queen as Commander-in-Chief, all members of the Cabinet, the law officers, all government ministers, every MP who has served in Parliament since October the 7th, 2001, every member of the House of Lords, including the Law Lords and the bishops, staff and advisors at number 10, civil servants in the main government departments, particularly the MOD, the Foreign Commonwealth Office, the Cabinet Office, and the Prime Minister's Office. Armed Forces commanders and senior military commanders. All of these people could at any time have said, no, we're not going to go ahead with this. But they have gone along with it for 8 years. Also, High Court and County Court judges and magistrates, the Metropolitan Police Commissioners and Chief Constables, the DPPs, 2 of them, and the Crown Prosecution Service. Also, directors and managers of companies and banks supplying funds and arms for the war. Journalists, editors, TV and radio presenters, and members of the media. And finally, taxpayers. Now, all of those people are groups of people who have taken part in the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Now, I know this comes as a bit hard to people, but I want to provide important legal information for everyone who finds themselves unwittingly on the list and wants to avoid prosecution. The Rome Statute is aware of these issues and contains a very important clause. It reads, "A person who abandons the effort to commit the crime or otherwise prevents the completion of the crime shall not be liable for punishment under this statute for the attempt to commit that crime if that person completely and voluntarily gave up the criminal purpose." Now, we need to be quite clear what completely and voluntarily means. I think this is important because an awful lot of people were deceived into going to war, as Paul has just been saying. A lot of MPs were deceived over this. No one knew these laws existed, but they did. And people were not informed about them, and they were misinformed and deceived. So if you're one of the people who wants to avoid prosecution as a war criminal, you must take remedial action immediately to prove to any future court that you have abandoned all the activities associated with the crimes and have completely and voluntarily given up the criminal purpose. So what does this mean? I'll just go through 5 things that, if you do them, it will count well for you if you're ever brought to court. The first is to report the war crimes to police. When you observe a crime taking place in this country, we all have a duty to report the crime to the police so they can investigate it and stop it. So I would recommend people start to report these crimes to the police, local police and the Scotland Yard. You should also join the tax rebellion. An important point is that it is a criminal offence to provide the financial means for a crime, for the commission of a crime. And that applies to genocide and crimes against humanity and war crimes in particular. So the legislators of the Rome Statute and the International Criminal Court, when thinking about this, laid it out very clearly: you must not finance a crime. So what you need to do is to arrange for your taxes and any corporation taxes and anything else to be paid into an escrow account and withheld from the government until the killing has stopped, the war with Afghanistan has ended, and criminal proceedings against war criminals have begun. It's a very simple thing to do. Now, you're not actually refusing to pay tax. What you are doing is steering your tax into a court so that it will only get used when the government is acting lawfully. And that's a very powerful way of stopping this government. And if we can get a national tax strike going, and if MPs can persuade, can get the military appropriations put into an escrow account, the war will stop within a week. The third thing is to contact your MP. Obviously this isn't well, they want to do so as well, pointing out that they're violating the laws of war and must act now if they are to avoid prosecution. We need to approach all our MPs, tell them about the laws of war, what the implications are for them as individuals, and ask them to sign early day motions. One of the things I hope the All Party Parliamentary Group will be able to do is to put forward some pretty tough early day motions to bring an end to the killing, to recall the troops and to initiate prosecutions. You can also remind your MPs that they're working for you, not for Gordon Brown, David Cameron, Nick Clegg, or any political party. Unless they act immediately to end the killing, you can tell them you will never vote for them again and ensure that they answer in court for their crimes. 2 more things. One is to inform the media, contact journalists to ensure that they report the truth about the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. We have not had any of the truth out in the open. explaining the need to stop the killing now, the illegality of the wars, the war crimes committed by our leaders, the duty to disobey unlawful orders, the duty to withhold taxes, and the necessity of holding war crimes trials of Britain's leaders. We need to get that information into the media. And finally, I would recommend joining the All Party Parliamentary Group and supporting it in all of its actions. If we can devote several hours a week for the next 3 months and get other people to do the same, to influence all the people in Parliament to start operating and obeying the law, I think we could have a big effect. Thanks.
Well, thank you. There's surely enough food for thought there.